So I'm going to get straight into this. I absolutely love Aloy. Not only does she use one of the better elements in the game, but I find she is so extremely fun to play. The way her kit works just makes her a delight. So I'm going to take the time to review her properly, go over all of her details, how she works, and what I enjoy most about her. While she does have a few issues, she is the first free 5-star character and the first collaboration character for Genshin Impact. Let's get right into it. Aloy is a cryo bow user who focuses on auto-attacking as opposed to focusing on charged attacks. She plays a bit like a cryo version of Yoimiya, although with a slightly more annoying way to proc her cryo infusion and not as easily as strong. That being said, I still find it's really fun trying to toy around with her compared to Yoimiya, who you just press a button to activate her infusion. Her elemental skill Frozen Wilds launches a cryo bomb that deals AoE damage. After exploding, the bomb explodes into 6 mini bomblets that explode when an enemy touches them or after a short duration of non-contact. Whenever a bomb explodes on the enemy, it lowers the enemy's attack damage for 6 seconds as well as providing a coil stack on Aloy, which in turn increases her attack. These stacks last for 30 seconds. Now, the more coil stacks Aloy receives, the higher her attack goes up to a maximum of 4 stacks, upon which she gains the Rushing Ice buff. This converts her normal attacks into cryo, as well as maintaining a fairly large attack buff. To add, simply obtaining a coil stack grants her a 16% attack buff, as well as providing an 8% attack buff to not only the rest of your party, but to any nearby party members in multiplayer for a total of 10 seconds. During Rushing Ice, she cannot gain more stacks, and this state lasts for a total of 10 seconds. This doesn't coincide well with the cooldown of her elemental skill, which is 20 seconds, so there will be downtime after obtaining the buff. When Aloy is in Rushing Ice, her cryo damage increases by 3.5% every second up to a total of 35% at 10 seconds, meaning the longer that she stays in this state, the better her cryo damage gets. Her burst, Prophecies of Dawn, throws a ranged bomb that deals AoE cryo damage. It's a fairly straightforward burst, but it does have a pretty good multiplier, as well as it only costing 40 energy, which makes it very easy to use and easy to refill. The cooldown is also quite short at 12 seconds, which adds to that ease of use. Her utility passive is actually pretty cool, although a little useless. It basically lets any animal that provides a form of meat or fowl not run away when approached. I don't find myself hunting meat very often, though it does really help proc an AoE on the birds in front of Timmy, which nets me a ton of fowl. Something that makes Aloy absolutely fantastic is that she has no constellations. She works perfectly right out of the gate, no power or utility hidden behind duplicates or the cash grab that is the wish system. This makes her extremely free-to-play friendly, and in my opinion, the best free-to-play character in the game, because once you have her, she's complete. Now, when I say the best character, it doesn't mean she doesn't have her flaws or is broken in any way. I just mean that you don't need to wonder when you will get the next constellation to unlock a portion of her kit. That being said, without constellations, she also misses out on the 3 extra levels that are gained in her elemental skill and burst that other characters obtain at C3 and C5. Now, you could say that her skills scale well enough to make up for this, but it is something to remember and might not be the best thing for someone who has an already well-developed account. When it comes to team builds, you can fit her into pretty much any team, but there are some issues that need to be taken into consideration. Firstly, her elemental skill bomblets. Because the bomblets get scattered around, it's sometimes hard to have them trigger her Rushing Ice buff. Sometimes the bomblets will just sit there, enemies will get around them, and you'll be stuck with 2 to 3 stacks unable to get to the 4th. Because of this, using someone who can group up these bomblets like Sucrose or Jean makes gaining the buff extremely easy and really removes the trouble of having to have enemies move into the bomblets themselves. To add, I like to use Raiden's Shogun along with Aloy, as Raiden's elemental skill can proc from a distance, adding to Aloy's damage. Not only that, but the elemental reaction of Superconduct, caused by Cryo and Electro, applies a defense debuff to the enemy which lowers their defense, which also helps Aloy deal even more damage when she is dealing physical damage. So best to use this during the downtime when outside of Rushing Ice, as Superconduct doesn't affect elemental damage. For the 4th slot, you can use whoever you wish. Again, I use Bennett for a substantial increase in attack power enabled by Bennett's burst. When it comes to weapons, she does have a few options depending on how you want to build her. Though before I get into that, I want to give a mention to something that really bothers me with this, the Viridescent Hunt. This is the Battle Pass bow. When I first got Aloy and noticed that the multiple bomblets need to hit the enemy in order to get the cryo infusion, I told myself that this weapon would be absolutely incredible for her. The fact that a cyclone is created to pull things in would facilitate the use of her skill and not require me to use Sucrose to suck in the bombs. Upon actual testing though, I noticed that the bombs don't actually move inside the cyclone. Now, I don't know if this was intended, but it is a complete joke, and another issue to add on to the pile of questionably bad interactions this game has with some of its cast. Would this be working as I would have hoped? This would have, in my opinion, made the Viridescent hunt Aloy's best weapon. I have opened tickets for this asking if this was intended, but unfortunately I didn't get any worthwhile response, and knowing miHoYo's track record of updating, buffing, or fixing characters and interactions, I have a feeling we won't be really seeing a fix for this anytime soon. Because of this, we need to look at other weapons. So when it comes to 5 stars, you can use the Thundering Pulse, the new bow Polar Star, or the Skyward Harp. I absolutely hate discussing 5-star bows, as to be honest, any 5-star weapon is almost always good, and usually overshadows 4-star weapons regardless of their effects. Not to mention that I personally believe that the weapon banner is a 100% scam, and make to steal as much money from the player base as possible. So moving on to 4-star bows, there's really only 2 bows to mention here, first being Rust. This, I believe, is Aloy's current best weapon. Aloy is a character that focuses primarily on normal attacks, so using this grants her a massive boost to her damage. Aside from any 5-star bow that you might have minus Amos bow, Rust is the best in slot for her. I also find it suits her aesthetic perfectly. The second weapon to mention here is the Compound Bow. This is a craftable bow, and while not nearly as good as Rust, it's extremely easy to obtain, getting refinements for, and gets Aloy up to par. This provides her with a stackable attack and attack speed buff, which suits her kit perfectly. The downside to this bow is its secondary stat, physical damage. I wouldn't recommend using this bow if you plan on using the Rushing Ice State with Aloy, as this weapon is only good if you plan on staying below 4 coil stacks, and focuses only on her normal physical damage. It's a great increase, but it will get completely nullified if you end up with the Cryo Infusion on your auto attacks. An honorable mention here would be the Sacrificial Bow. The ability of this bow gives you a chance to recast your elemental skill, making it easier for you to proc her Rushing Ice State if you aren't planning on using a character to group up Aloy's bomblets. Not only that, but it lets you guarantee full uptime on Aloy's Rushing Ice State if you can time your elemental skill uses properly, as it won't have that 10-second downtime after the first Rushing Ice State goes away. When it comes to artifacts, you can build her in a variety of ways, and it really depends on how you want to use her. For the main stats, I would personally recommend an Attack Sands, Attack Goblet, and a Crit Damage Circlet. She has decent cryo damage built into her kit, and while it would definitely improve with a cryo damage goblet, the downtime between her Rushing Ice States means that the cryo goblet will provide no use to you when dealing physical damage for 10 seconds, so an attack goblet will make sure you deal increased damage during both states. Now I will mention that if you plan on using a sacrificial bow, you can use a cryo goblet, as you will be able to keep up your Rushing Ice State much easier without needing to deal with downtimes. For sets, you can go with the Blizzard Strayer if you need additional crit, though in my opinion, it's not my preference. When using a character as a main DPS, you want something that adds more damage rather than utility, and while this can add more damage by ensuring you crit more often, if you have artifacts and other sets that net you a decent amount of crit, you won't need this set. The set of choice for me is the Shiminawa set. This provides her with an attack buff as well as the normal attack damage buff when using her elemental skill, which does leave her some downtime as her elemental skill cooldown is actually quite long, so either run her in a duo DPS setup with someone like Raiden Shogun, or you can run a sacrificial bow on her to almost ensure that she has this buff up indefinitely as long as you time your uses properly. While this will take away some energy from her burst requires very little energy to activate, so you will be able to generate enough energy to still be able to burst pretty much whenever you want. If you want something a bit easier to use, you can always run a 2-piece Blizzard Strayer and 2-piece Gladiator or Shiminawa, and this will provide you with decent all-around buffs that have no restrictions or downtime. You can also build her with 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Shiminawa if you want to use something even easier, or just want something that adds more damage during your downtime if you plan on using her as a main DPS. Lastly, you can run her on a Pale Flame set along with the physical damage or attack goblet, and Compound Bow if you want to turn Aloy into physical DPS monster. This all really depends on how exactly you plan on using her, and it's something that I really like about her: options. She has quite a lot of freedom in how she can be built, which is what makes her so fun to me. In the end, Aloy is a free character given to everybody. She isn't hindered by the greedy wish system and has the ability to fit into quite a few team compositions due to her being able to be built in a variety of ways. Now, while she does have her downsides, I'm personally having a blast playing with her and would recommend anyone who wants to have some fun to just give her a try. She is free after all. So how do you plan on building Aloy? Do you plan on using her at all? What do you like or dislike about her? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and like and subscribe if you want to see more of my guides. I love doing this type of stuff and would love your thoughts and opinions on how you feel about Aloy. You can also follow me on twitch.tv/wickedsynth. See y'all later.